Well, thank you guys. We're going to skip all the introductions. I know it just seems weird that you have an attorney talking to you guys about parenting, and this is not a parenting class, but it truly is about just shifting cultural norms. And so I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about how I got into this, and then we're going to do the game, okay? And I've been doing this around the community. I have a little survey for you guys to do. What I really want to know is your attitudes, your real attitudes, what you really want to think about, what you absolutely think, because it really is about finding out where people are, not shaming, not judging, but just trying to figure out so we can go on this journey to make a cultural shift to protect our kids. So just so you guys, and you already know, I run this program, this Audrey Hepburn Care program in the Children's Center, and do a lot of prevention work. But what I think, and I'm not sure if we're unique, I do not know your numbers, but I can tell you that of the kids we have served in my medical program, our sexual abuse isn't going down. Now, across the country, Dr. Finkelhor tells us the numbers are going down. It's not happening. Our numbers are still steady. But what we're finding for our physical abuse is it's off the charts in its increases. I mean, I have these silly, silly increases. And so what I did was I reached out and I realized that while still in the amount of cases that we're doing, the majority of it is sexual abuse, but this number is getting bigger and bigger each and every year. And these are kids with findings. And so what we find is that our DCFS, and I don't know about yours, because of state funding cuts, they are only taking the worst of the worst. So it used to be if a kid had an injury, we knew there were going to be some action, there were resources, but there really aren't as much anymore, and not that we're blaming or anyone's doing a bad job, that's just the way it is. And so we decided we had to do something different. So we as a team met together and said, what could we do as an intervention right here within our Children's Advocacy Center for every kid we serve, as a case manager, as a pediatrician, as an attorney, to have a conversation to help these parents in a non-shaming and non-blaming way, encourage them, let them know we have parenting classes. However, I will tell you, with a lot of the young parents that we serve of the millennial generation, they're not inclined to sign up for a parenting class. And we find they're much more likely to connect with someone, or if we give them an app. And I'm going to tell you about an app that's been created and we're working on also doing. Now, for those of you who have never been to New Orleans, if you may not know this, but this is like the little shoe at the bottom, all right? We mapped our abuse. That yellow spot, that's where, so now I serve the southeast portion of Louisiana and the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. That yellow spot is New Orleans, and that's where the physical abuse was occurring, okay? Ding, 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 do we have a problem? Then, so we mapped it and we spread it out and we looked at it this way. And we looked at these hot spots, and I brought this to the city council, and it's called our NOLA for Life with our mayor. And actually, I brought it to someone that's on the NOLA for Life committee. And they looked at it, and they said, this looks a lot like the homicide map. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because the violence is starting where? In the home and spilling out into our community and our streets. And so on a higher level, if we could reduce this violence, we could potentially reduce violence in our streets. So we're doing what we call safe sanctuaries. So those little flags in the map are churches. Because we actually know that families a lot of times proactively spank, hit, whoop, because they say it's in the Bible. And so we need to go where? To the churches, to the priests, to the pulpit, to the ministers, to the pastors, to the rabbi, and get them to be stakeholders in helping us to deliver this message if we're going to be effective. So we went and we were mapping and we're looking at these spots, and that's what we're doing. Now, it's really important to understand. I don't know if you guys had seen this piece. Anybody saw this piece? It was published by the British press. The BBC published this. It got a lot of, even in America, a lot of people were talking about it. And they were sort of saying, and this is an old piece, this is 2008, they're saying, why is it in America, where they have a lot more resources and a lot more wealth and a lot more social services, why is it that more kids are being killed on U.S. soil than U.S. soldiers being killed in Afghanistan? Why is it that we have a rate that's higher than any other industrialized country of kids dying in their own homes by people who loved them? And so what is different? Why is that different? And so if you look at these other countries, so you know, France is the next lowest. Now, France actually, I think, still has a higher teenage pregnancy rate, because people say, well, the teenage pregnancy rate's higher here. No, they have a lot of the same issues. So there's something really strange going on. There's a big change in other countries that hasn't happened here. Now, here's a piece that no one knows. Now, of course, I look at Louisiana, and it's higher, and in Louisiana it's going up. The United States is kind of coming down. But you actually do, while you have a kind of low ACE rate, although 2 ACEs is bad, it's important to understand that you also have a child fatality rate, right? And it's not super low. In order for us to have averages, you got to have someone that's really low on this piece. And a lot of folks were like, well, this isn't really about spanking. And we started thinking, well, okay, why are these kids being killed? So we had started, after Katrina, giving out a tree in memory of each child who had died the year before. And it was a great thing. We would have all of our politicians come. We had our fitters, Senator Landrieu, everybody would come, our city council people. I had Ricky Jackson, our Super Bowl star. I had lots of folks that came and got these trees. And we started looking at who is dying and why are they dying. And there's a portion of our kids that are dying because of co-sleeping. And so we're trying to do a baby box initiative and kids for cribs and dealing with that. I know you guys are too. But we looked at the other kids that are dying. And are they dying because someone hated them? No, they're dying because some parent killed them in supposedly loving discipline. And so we started looking at this and sort of figuring it out. And the BBC kind of called us on it. Now, the one piece of evidence that you need to know about this is that in other countries, they used to have the same rate of child fatalities that we do in America. It used to be the same high rate. But it has been a major, major shift. Their rate has gone, that's plummeted. But so has their use of corporal punishment. And that is why child maltreatment, in addition to all the research, has come out and said, this is it. We got to stop pretending like this isn't it. If we hit kids, we can harm them. All right? And we now know that even if we don't harm their skin and their body, that we could potentially be harming other pieces that we talked about today. Now, I want to ask you, a lot of people say this will never happen in our lifetime. Maybe, maybe not. But think about other cultural norms, like hitting spouses, all right? Was there a time? So if you ran an ad right now in, in Essex and in New Jersey papers, do you think if someone said, do you think children need to be spanked? Do you think most people might say yes? Yeah, I would think so, because across this country, we're above 50%. If you ran that same ad and you said, if a woman needs to be spanked, should she be spanked? People would say no. Do you think in our lifetime that was different? Yeah, it was. And so in a very short time period, if you look at this, this is actually from the early 60s, and these are men, married men, who had no shame. And here's this guy, he said, and I'm sorry it's blurry, the Brooklyn barber said, yes, if they deserve it, I have a lot of faith in my hairbrush. And look at this guy. He says, here's Teddy. Teddy says, the Brooklyn parking attendant, you bet, it teaches them who's the boss. A lot of women tend to forget this is a man's world. Do you think Teddy would say that today? He would not say that. Okay. His name's Teddy. Teddy, I am so sorry I did not plant this. Everybody's having a big laugh on your part. Okay, I promise. If I ever come back to New Jersey, Dominic, I'm taking Teddy's name off of this. Yes, ma'am. Yep, absolutely. You don't hit your wife with a stick any bigger than your thumb. Right, absolutely. So, and that's in the Bible along with the rod, right? But we stopped doing that. That's what's called a social norm. Does that make sense? It was once normal in my lifetime to be proud enough to say this stuff. Nowadays, not this Teddy or that Teddy would ever say that, right? So we've had a huge cultural shift in a very short period of years. So I ask you, can we have the same cultural shift when it comes to protecting our kids? And a lot of people tell me, no, it's not going to happen in your lifetime, Stacie. And I didn't go to law school, in oh God, I got out of law school in 1989. I got to go back, 86. I did not go to law school in 1986 to be like the spanking expert. I really didn't think it was harmful. I had no clue. But it's after years and years and years of doing this and looking into the whites of eyes of people that didn't intend to harm their kids, and yet bad things are happening to these families, that I was like, oh, I'm going to have to rethink this. And then you look at these other countries, and country after country after country are banning it. They're actually making it illegal. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm the vice president on the APSAC board. We do not believe it. I serve on the Corporal Punishment Summit. We just came out with a really strong statement that said that hitting kids is really harmful and it's a type of abuse, and so did the CDC, and all the science says it, all right? And it's really hard. It's a lot of big backlash to this. But we're going to have to be brave. We're going to have to be brave. There was a time where we didn't think incest was happening, right? And so we're going to have to be really, really brave. Now, when you look at these countries, I mean, most South American countries have banned it. Most African countries have now banned it. They've actually looked. It's actually considered culturally adverse in tribes to hit your child because the child is considered sacred. In some tribes, it's actually considered reincarnation of family. You would never hit them. And so it's really important to study and understand. In the European countries where they've reduced the incidence of homicide, child homicides. Now, are kids getting spanked to death? Does it happen? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. In the last year, this young boy was spanked to death by his well-intended employed father and mother in the community where I grew up, in the really good suburb that surrounds New Orleans. He was killed for bad grades. He told his teacher that day, you don't understand, if I go home with this report card, my dad's going to kill me. How many teachers hear that? Often. And do they believe it? No. Did it happen? Could you imagine living with that kind of guilt? And this baby was actually beaten to death with a slipper. And mom says, I was just trying to discipline her if she would have just kept still. That was her statement. Now, I showed this to you guys earlier, but we have this idea. There is this concept, and they've done this. They've looked at attitudes, that people actually do believe certain races hit more than others. And we do know that there's some differences, okay? So I disclosed to you earlier that we now know that spanking is an ace, so I have an ace of being spanked by my parents, all right? My parents are always like, would you stop telling people this? It wasn't that bad. So, but here's the deal. My mom, okay, who lived in the suburbs, she never hit me in the mall, okay, or the grocery store. She didn't hit me in Dornax, the grocery store in New Orleans, okay? She would say, you're going to get it on the way home, all right? Now, my mom, that same mom, she'd see someone else of maybe a different race hitting their kids in the mall, and she'd be like, oh, my goodness. And I'm like, you do that, you know? And she'd be like, I would never do that here. And I'm like, Mom, you were a closet spanker, okay? All right? So there might be some differences, but the reality is they're all hitting their kids. And at some point in time, we actually had this crazy little bit of science that had come out, and it actually had kind of said that, well, they don't think spanking is as harmful to African American kids. I don't know if you guys ever heard about that. It was a study by Dodge. It's now been reversed. And here is the latest and greatest. I want to give you the breaking research. And I know this is a lot on a slide. But the latest and greatest, okay, that just came out is that the negativity, and they actually were going to study between European American children and African American children, were there any differences? And here's the finding. So we have put that to rest forever. The finding actually said for African American children, discipline practices in infancy had direct long-term implication for behavior in 5th grade. So by infancy, they went to toddler, so they're going to 5th grade. So they actually showed that it was more correlated for African American, the harms were higher. That coefficient D was stronger than it was for European. And so it has put that to rest forever. And we got to stop thinking that somehow or another some kids need to be hit and others don't, or that it doesn't have the same amount of harm. Now, what I can tell you from a forensic standpoint and running a program, the thing that hurts me the most is we'll have a kid that comes in that has dark skin. And in that case, you can't see the bruise, but you know what speaks? Their liver. their muscles. They can have muscle breakdown. What's it called? I got to call on one of my nurses. Rhabdo. Thank you. I know enough to be dangerous. And they also have a liver enzyme. They can have a liver enzyme. Kids with light skin, and they look all bruised up, but they don't have the rhabdo. They don't have the liver thing. Parents don't even realize they're hurting their child. They're hurting their insides in addition to their skin, but because they can't see it because of the dark coloration. Now, it's come out. Now, Folletti said he kind of always knew that spanking was on the thing. You know, when they did this, Dr. Folletti actually knew this. But because this was going to be so controversy, they didn't really. But when they went back and looked at it, they now like, spanking is an ace. You guys are in this business because you worry about kids being sexually abused, witnessing domestic violence. You worry about these things. It's the same. It's a 1. Whether the kid is sexually abused or spanked, it's a 1. And so that's really hard for us to accept. The other thing that's really important to understand, those of us who were spanked as kids are way more likely to spank our own children. So if you were spanked, you're going to spank. It's hard. And so I like to look to the positive deviants, or give me those stories. Because like the people who were spanked as kids, but then decided, I'm not going to spank my kids. Now, why did I decide? I'm no hero. I'm no superhero. My kids would have been spanked if I didn't do this work. I was like, I could lose my job, okay? Let's be realistic, right? I tell that to Megan and Trey all the time. You know what? And my parents used to say all the time, you have the best of kids, but if they just had a little butt whooping, they'd be so much better, you know? And I mean, that's what I heard all the time. I got pressure to spank. And I married a man, and he says it was a prenuptial agreement that he couldn't spank. And we didn't actually write this down, but we did talk about it. But I never forget, and I already told you this story, I'm sorry, but he like literally one time tells my son from across the room, he was like a toddler, and he goes, don't make me come over there. And I'm like, what are you going to do when you get there? And he goes, you didn't tell me I couldn't threaten him. And I'm like, what? This was common sense. And he goes, well, how are they ever going to learn if they don't fear me? Because he grew up, he had a policeman dad, and that's how he respected his parents. And he remembered all of that, and he couldn't even imagine what it would be like. And I'm thinking, oh boy, I got my work cut out for me, because he couldn't even imagine. He goes, I wasn't going to hit him, but you mean I can't even raise my hand? I'm like, absolutely not. That's assault, okay? We are not going to do this. Okay? And he was like, you are really, all right? One year for Mother's Day, his gift to me was actually on his new car, which he never put bumper stickers. He put my sticker on it that says, it's never okay to hit a child. So, and he swears to this day, every restaurant he pulls up in New Orleans, like, do you really believe that, sir? And he goes, my wife, maybe Judy, it was her Mother's Day gift. But, okay, but here's the deal. You know, people are hitting kids at a really young age. So they're actually showing that 5% of moms are actually reporting, proactively reporting, they're not even ashamed of it, that they start hitting at 3 months. And 30% of 1-year-olds are being hit on a regular basis. And now we know all this science about the brain, and we're showing its difference in the brain. And for the work we do, it's highly correlated. And so it's so interesting. And I mean, if there's one slide that you can show somebody, I will tell you, I do a lot of these trainings, this slide is the #1 slide. I can tell them all day long it causes all kind of bad long-term health comes, like to their mental health, and people like, yeah, but they're going to turn out okay, okay? Somehow that doesn't rate, but hurting your kid's brain, that's important stuff. So if there's one thing you're going to say to someone to try to inspire them, I think this study that was done at Harvard Medical School is the ticket. So study after study has shown, I really always do this to make sure, I know you guys are you know, really, truly hanging in there with me with repeat slides today, but it's just part of my stick, I got to keep it. But really important, I love to ask people, how many of you want your kids to be happy when they grow up? And I'll get 100% of people, right? And how many of you want them to be, you know, good citizens and that they get jobs and they get a good education? 100% of hands. And how many of you want your child to have mental health problems? How many of you want your child to have a negative child relationship with you? How many of you want them to have externalizing behaviors or antisocial behaviors? Or how many of you want your children to spank your grandchildren? Nobody wants these things. Sorry, but you might want that. Okay, but most people by that generation are like, no. And a lot of people say, like, what the heck? They hit me, but I can't hit, but hear that all the time. But it's really important to understand. Look here, when Dr. Liz Gershoff did this study, what she found is these greens are those coefficient T. Those are really strong correlations. But it wasn't as strong with immediate defiance. So here's the thing that I feel sorry for parents, okay? One, most of them were spanked. They grow up in communities where they think it's right. They think it's in their Bible if they come from a strong religious background. And here's the big whopper. If a child's reaching for that outlet and they're a toddler and they hit their hand, the research actually says that in that moment when the parent's standing there over them, that kid isn't likely to immediately defy the parent and touch the outlet. So what does that parent learn? It worked. And so the parent has all this cultural pressure to do it, and their own Pavlov, their own Skinner experience is that it works. So we're working upstream. Does that make sense? And so we have to think of things to help them and explain that you might think it works, but we got to explain how it's ineffective. Now, we got the CDC to help us. The other thing I think it's important to understand is there's a huge overlap of kids that come into my clinic for a sexual abuse exam, and we find old injuries, old loop marks, old belt marks, old bruises, old burns on them. And sometimes the person that put them there is in the other room. And so we see that. There's an overlap. We also routinely see kids, and I forgot to put the sound on here.
So you told your grandma and your auntie. What did they tell you when you told them?
They told me to tell my mom, but I wasn't very comfortable with it.
What were you worried about with telling your mom?
I thought I would get in trouble.
This is when my doctor catches herself.
What happens when you get in trouble with your mom?
I usually get a whooping.
We're hearing that in their forensic interviews. They're not telling us.
What is it that your mom, what was it you didn't want to tell me about?
About my uncle.
Tell me about your uncle.
I hope my mom will be my uncle and my uncle not will be mad at me.
You know what we'll do? We'll talk to your mom about it. But usually, moms can, what happens when your mom gets
That's when she catches herself.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. It's like, she always says, she goes, all right, we do this presentation together at National Children's Advocacy Center. And she's like, I hate the part when I say, oh, yeah, can you cut that out, Stacie? But she goes, but you can't, kids are delaying because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. We find with the parents that we serve, telling them that if you spank, they might not trust you to be able to tell you. And this is the number one thing you want to protect your kids. I also want to show you, and I don't want to trigger anyone, and if you don't want to see a picture with bruises, I want you to close your eyes. But this is a case where kids were molested by mom's boyfriend. They were placed with mom's brother. And mom's brother looked, for all intents and purposes, like he really cared. He called and he said, we're running late. They wouldn't get their butts ready today. And when he got there, he actually said to the nurse who was taking the vitals, I just want to tell you, I had to pop them today because they wouldn't get ready to come here. But I knew we needed to get in here and get them checked out. I want to show you. Now, these kids were walking. If you looked at them, you'd have never known. Okay? If we weren't doing their sex abuse that day, we'd have never known about this. These kids report that they were getting whoopings all the time. This is what we saw that day. So we would have never, ever known, right? Never, ever known. That's what we're seeing. And so we can't continue to pretend that this isn't a part of our jobs, that this isn't a part of our mission, that this isn't a part of what we could prevent. And this was Uncle. I actually felt sorry for him. Now, he was arrested. I actually did enjoy that that moment for him. He was arrested outside the CAC, by the way. But I felt sorry for him. He actually gave me his belt. He said he would never use it again because we asked him what he said, Mr. Meany, my doctor wanted it, so I went in there, I collected the evidence, I got to play cop for a minute. Sometimes I wish I could do that more, but and that we compared it to the injuries and stuff. But I really felt sorry for him. He actually got on his knees and he prayed, and he had said in front of all of us, and he said, I love these children so much. I really just hit them because I thought I needed to. They were constantly crying and complaining, and I wanted them to be good kids, and I knew my sister never disciplined them. On some level, he really did think he was doing the right thing. And I think we have a duty to at least let them know. Now, here's the problem. As their attorney, I can't tell them, because the research by this researcher, a good friend of mine who I teach the ACEs class with, Dr. Kathy Taylor at Tulane, she did research, and basically she asked parents, and these were impoverished parents in our WIC clinics, and she asked them, that specific group, who would they listen to about discipline, about changing their mind? What profession would they listen to? And their attorney's not on the list, okay? They're the number one person was their pediatrician, so they're people that they get their medical care from. That's who they're saying they're going to listen to. Number two for African Americans, a strong second, was religious leaders. Number three was probably most of you in this room, other professionals that serve them. You have the power to change their mind. So we developed a campaign because our pediatrician said they don't really have time to do that. So now our pediatricians hold up signs. We throw in dogs because everybody loves a dog. And we translate all the research into it. You can get any of these images for free. You can join our campaign. You can go to Instagram or hashtag Dear Parents, and you can download these images. We find no one image is enough, and so we make them into screensavers. So all throughout our children's hospital, all the screensavers play these all the time because it's a message to the helping professionals that it's harmful. It gives them the new research so that then they can say it to the parents. Does that make sense? So we have to first inspire the messenger to then, so that we can do it, because a billboard isn't going to do it. We started with this campaign. We started on kids, all right? Now here's the problem. This was pretty good for my millennials because they're all into tattoos, but people my age don't like this, and they thought it was like tattoos. And so we had a lot of negative with the campaign, so we gave it up. The other thing, I had one image of this really cute little girl, and we had put, if you hit, I'll hit, on her forehead. We had written it on her forehead, and it was really great. It was really powerful. We tested that with a focus group in a church in New Orleans East, and I had two ladies in the midway in, and literally raised their hand and said, you know what? I'd slap her. That's so disrespectful. You're not telling me what to do. So we realized that our messages sometimes can be harmful. And so what we thought is, it really breaks down to, there's some research that actually says the best message you can give to a family is that hitting in all circumstances, even in a last resort, is harmful and never helpful, okay? It's ineffective, and there are effective alternatives. So we're joining, 30 other children's hospitals and becoming a no-hit zone, and we've developed a whole bunch of materials. I do want to talk to you a little bit about the gap. So you guys probably aren't in the biggest part of the gap. So we're in the South, so we hit more, but you guys, even a little bit higher up than us, are still hitting, so don't be too proud. The other thing I think it's important to understand, okay, don't look too down on us, right, is that our born-again Christians and our Christians, they're all hitting, but they're both coming down at the same rate. You see that? And then look here, in the South and even in the Northeast, we're all kind of coming down a little bit, right? And the same goes for African American and whites. While there's a little bit of disparity in some areas, it's still coming down. Notice this, there's been a change. I think this is shocking. At one point, Democrats and independents from this particular study were hitting and approved of a good hard spanking starting in toddler more than Republicans. Now, Democrats have dropped down. This is the only thing where we've had a crossover. And what we find is that for some parents, the messages that we give are not effective. So we tend to use messages like, use positive parenting. If I tend to be a conservative, authoritarian parent, that I get a lot of parents in these surveys who say, I don't want to be my child's friend. Now, you might think poorly of that, but that's their value, right? And that it's really important, instead of saying positive, because what they're thinking is positive is like, you know, it's time out. And time out never worked for my kids. I don't know about for you. It worked well for me, okay? If I could have a long bath and a glass of wine, I was a much better parent with some time out. but it didn't work. And so I don't think if we just recommend those techniques, it helps. So we need to get very creative. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to have you guys break into groups. Give me a minute because I'm going to explain to you all the good rules and the fun stuff we're going to do. And we're going to break into groups and give you some scenarios. And I want you in your groups to talk about these scenarios. And I want you, you're going to see your scenario. And you're basically going to just say, how would you tell a parent? Now remember, you only got a few minutes. You're busy, right? You only got a few minutes. You could even be in the mall. How would you tell a parent in a non-shaming, non-judgmental way that this scenario is harmful, that it's ineffective, and what's an alternative? Now, I just gave you some hints. We want you to stay away from just saying, try time out, because it doesn't work for all parents or all kids all the time. So let's give them something like a little more creative than that. And let's not say things just use positive parenting, because we might have a very authoritarian parent that's like, I don't want to do that. So we're going to give them really specific things. That make sense? Okay? And the other thing I will tell you is that one of the things, and you don't have to put this on here, I love this. This was done by a doctor out of Vanderbilt, Dr. Seth Soler out of Vanderbilt. And it's an app online. It's free. It's a website. It's about to be an app. I'll take that back. It's called playnicely.org. And it gives some really great advice about things that are great, things that are good, and things that are not recommended. Okay? And so we want advising parents, we want to get over here to the great. Does that make sense? Because parents are going to naturally fall down into the good and then into the not recommended. Does that make sense? Because those are their fallbacks. So you don't want to really do the warning and the no's and the 1, 2, 3s and the timeouts, because those are things that they're going to kind of naturally do. You really want to recommend, when we're doing a cultural shift, the things that are going to be effective, that are truly considered great in redirecting behavior. So I do want to say one thing. I know I gave a reference earlier about what we know about African American parents. Another piece that we see a lot is parents will say, you know, that African American parents hit more often. And it's Dr. Stacie Patton. Has anybody here been ever able to see Dr. Patton? Is she not a rock star? I mean, like, I'm like a follower. I mean, like, yeah, I could be like in her cult. So anyway, if you haven't seen her, please check out her website called Spare the Kids. She wrote this book. It's on Amazon. Consider checking it out. It is amazing. I have never shared it with a parent who is just not totally taken. And she teaches at Morgan, and basically she studied this. Where does the hitting of African American children come from? If it didn't come from Africa, where does it come to American kids? Through slavery. Right, and so it's really important to understand that. The other thing is the Bible. You got to deal with the Bible, right? So the Bible, we have that spare the rod, spoil the child. Now, I've actually gone to Ireland with Kathy Taylor, presented at Ispacan, and we actually interviewed shepherds there and said, would you ever hit the sheep with what is the Hebrew word for rod, a Hebrew word, staff? Would you ever hit the sheep with the staff? And they said, no, absolutely. It is there for them to guide. Wherever the staff is where the sheep follow, and you use the hook to pull them back into the flock. So sometimes just explaining that from a biblical reference. The other thing that we hear routinely is that if we don't hit our kids, they'll go to jail. Here's the fallacy of that. Find me someone who's incarcerated in a state penitentiary who was never beat. And so James Garbarino, Dr. Garbarino, has gone around and listened to killers across the country, and he can't find any of them who weren't beat as children. So, all right. So it's an important piece. Now, I want you to first remember that we talked about earlier the cognitive dissonance. And no matter what this statement says, if it says fussing, what we mean is hitting. And we want to always make an assumption that that's what we mean. All right? And that really we want to stay away from this whole idea of timeout. So I want to break you guys up. I want you to power through with me. I want you to just talk about the scenario for a very short period of time. I'll give you a few minutes, and then just write down some ideas. Now, they're in groups. If you guys kind of want to stay in the kind of groups that you are and just kind of circle, I can just give you. So you guys are going to have, he won't listen. All right? Can y'all just circle right here? Is that okay? All right. And you guys are going to have the whiner. All right, there we go. And I'm going to go back here. and give you guys the fighter. All right, can you guys just kind of group right this in this little group right here? All right, potty training betrayal. These are all real scenarios from my clinic. So if y'all could group right here. There are no one right answer. You know what, whatever you could do productive, I'll make it work. How much time we got? This is it. You got mess maker. Oh, great. Destined for jail. You guys, okay, did y'all have one there? I got that group. Okay, y'all gonna have destined for jail. Okay, well then y'all gonna be with them. Just grab one, grab a group. As long as you're in a group, or you can come be in a group with me. We got lazy penmanship. How about that right here? Okay. Whoops, I knocked that over. Okay, and bad report card, which is my most common. All right, you guys got it? Who doesn't have one? I still got liar and teenage nightmare. Do you need one? You got one? We can make groups smaller because I got promiscuous child, teenage nightmare, and liar. What you got? Okay, so turn it over. Turn it over. So on the back are some suggestions of alternatives for your age group that we designed, but you can come up with your own. You guys need to play. Let's give you guys promiscuous child. Two of you, that's great. So we want to see if one or two of you from your group are brave enough and to report back and tell us what you would say. And remember, in each of these scenarios, we need you to cover these 3 prongs, because what they've shown in all the international studies is that it really had to be 3 messages. And that if we truly just tell people, don't hit your kids, don't spank your kids, and that's what they do, that their behavior will get worse and they'll get more violent. So we have to give them an alternative. It's got to be a part. It's one of our prongs. But we got to also make sure we tell them how it's harmful and why it would be ineffective in that scenario. So, he won't listen. I know it's right here, so I'll just read. He won't listen. I have no choice but to whoop him to get him to listen. Are you telling me I can't spank my child? Besides, I always tell him that it hurts me more than him, and we cuddle when he stops crying. What do you say? We hear this a lot. These are all real scenarios from my clinic. All right, he won't listen. Who's going to report back to us? Don't be shy. Who's coming? You guys are who we won't listen, right? All right, one brave voice. What would you say? Okay. Yay!
So one thing we thought of is to talk to the mom and say, well, you're saying he doesn't listen, and you're saying it bothers you that you hit him. So if it's bothering that you hit him, it's not good for you either. So let's think of a different way that maybe we can get him to listen to you so that you don't feel bad and he doesn't feel bad.
I love that. That's awesome. So that's a great way to talk her through about let's do something else. Now, what would you tell her is there something else if they won't listen?
Okay, so some of this is age dependent. So one of the things we told her was, that I would tell her is try to distract. And depending on, let's color, let's do something, let's go for a walk. Try to distract him away from whatever it is. If it's the kind of thing like, you need to leave and he doesn't want to come out of the house, try to see if there's something that you can come up with that. Oh, but if you come with me on the way home, we'll go for ice cream. Something that will make him want to do
What it is.
you want him to do.
An incentive, and then also just being there and being present, and that's awesome. And I think you've hit on the fact that you're starting with it's making you feel bad, right? How would you tell this mom that hitting them, besides just making you feel bad, is bad for them? How is it harmful to this child? Anybody else from this group? How would you say it's harmful to hit?
You're showing him that it's okay for him to do that to somebody else.
So
Mommy
it's
does it to me, it must be okay.
Brilliant. And so from Gershoff and from George Holden, Dr. Holden and Dr. Gershoff's research, it causes aggression. And so that we've found that even when we control for all other factors, kids who are hit, when they factor out everything else, like witnessing domestic violence, they're more likely to hit other kids. So that's a great one, and it also covers that it's ineffective. Awesome. Fabulous. I will tell you, there's no one right answer, okay? The one thing that I find works really, really well when they pull me on this one, and I can't tell you how many kids get hit for not listening, all right? My favorite thing to do is my gimmick about how I go in. I'm like, oh, I will, we're nonprofits under Children's Hospital umbrella. We have this great children's hospital right down the street, and we have a fabulous audiology department, and I can get you an appointment today, and I can get you transportation to go down there and test his hearing. Oh, no, he can hear me. And I'm like, oh, well, what do you really mean by this then when you say don't listen? And the parent will say what? He doesn't obey. And I keep going with this until I get to obey. And what's amazing is that it is a light bulb. What they really want is obey. And what we find for a lot of parents, when a parent says jump, the response other than how high is not listening, okay? And so even if it's not reasonable or not acceptable, that is the proper response, is how high or you jump, right? And that's what the parent really wants. So I find a lot of times with parents is, well, okay, Mom, so what I understand is you're worried about your child's safety and you need them sometimes to obey you, because I can understand if a child's running into the street, you need them to stop, right? And so what could you do? And I find that if we just frame it for them and we make it real. The other thing that I find is really important with kids is that parents put a lot of stuff out there and the kid doesn't really hear it because they're used to tuning mom out until mom starts doing what? Escalating and yelling and stuff, and that doesn't really work. And so what we really find that works really, really well is just going over, stopping what you're doing, dropping to eye level and say, I'm giving you 1 minute to wrap this up. Kid now knows mom is serious. Mom isn't over there yelling and acting all crazy. This mom is like, this is it, right? And then guess what? They're going to obey, right? And so I find that we just use that word. But I think you have I love your instincts about pulling out, it makes mom feel bad. And that's that parent-child relationship. Awesome. Very good. Awesome. All right. Our next scenario. Now, and guys, if you notice, these are our materials that are on the back that just give you some just little ideas. And there's no one right one to do it. But our next one. The other thing I want to make sure that we cover it with is it hurts me more than it hurts him. Is that true? No. My parents said that all the time. And I always wanted to say, no, it doesn't, right? But you know what? Did you guys know that there's some research out there? I thought I had it right here, but I don't. That actually says that whole shades of gray thing, guess what it's correlated to? Being spanked by a loving parent. They actually show that S&M practice and wanting people to spank you. Now, I don't put that science out there, but there is science on there because I don't want folks to, because that's kind of the weaker science. But I find for a lot of dads saying that if you spank your daughter, she may one day want a partner to spank her. They're like, whoa, okay? That really works, okay? So sometimes that whole, I cuddle you after because I love you and I hit you, well, they connect love and being hit. Do you want your child to grow up wanting someone to hit them out of love? No parent ever wanted that ever, right? All right, who's got our whiner? You guys. All right. She whines all the time. It drives us crazy. The only thing that ever works is if we tap her and give her something real to cry about. Have you ever heard that? Yes. So what would you guys tell this parent? Awesome. Harm. Yep.
Physical harm as well, and think about the brain damage life.
The brain. Yeah, it can change the brain. Parents like, what? I love to pull that up and show them. Awesome. Awesome. What else? And what would you tell them to do instead? Distract. Distract. The dirty D's always work.
Help her find her words instead of just her whining.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Right.
Acknowledge that she's trying to get a message across, but just not in the right way. So I know you're upset about something, but blah, 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 blah.
Awesome. Absolutely. And this is harder than you think. hard to have this conversation. But I mean, I've been in the practice now. We do it with every parent that comes in. It gets easier each and every time. But you guys have that pediatric experience, so you kind of know what to do. One of the things I find that really helps is a little bit of humor with my kids, and they always know. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I know. Have a little bit of, cheese with that wine. That was always my thing. I mean, do you need some cheese to go with that wine? Because I can't hear you when you're whining. My ears just don't work. They don't hear whining. You're going to have to use some other words. Oh, wait, I heard words. Let me hear what you were saying. And that was always my thing. I would not listen. I would ignore. Because whining was like chalkboard the nails. I love this analogy. Most of the time when kids are whining, all right, it's halt, right? You have to halt and figure out, are they hungry? Are they angry? Are they lonely? Are they tired? If you look, if this is one of the things, typically one of these is a solution. So my kids, when I would pick them up after school, I was tired. They went to aftercare. They claimed that was abuse too. But basically, when I would pick them up, they were starving. If I didn't have some chips or something to throw into the back of the minivan, they would eat me alive, right? And my whole day was going to be bad. So I had to prepare for hunger, okay? And I'm surrounded by men. If they're hungry, they are not nice people, okay? They can't control that. So really, really important. Anything else you guys wanted to add in this group? And a lot of kids get hit for whining. I mean, truly, we see that all the time. The fighter. Who's got the fighter? Did I go this way? Who got fighter? Did I not give the fighter out? You got it. Y'all are a bashful group. So I don't tolerate hitting in the house. If the kids hit each other, we show them what it feels like, just like our parents did to us. And look, we turned out good. We have good jobs, a nice home, and we send our kids to good schools like yours. What do you say?
Well, we said that, two wrongs doesn't make a right. How you gonna hit by hitting them doesn't make any sense.
And that's good, and it causes that aggression, right? So the harm is going to be that they might hit more, right? Don't hit your brother. You got it.
And we, preach catch them to a scenario where
Brilliant.
they would hit and they didn't, give them praise or, take them out, give them dessert.
I love the fact that you said teach like that positive and catch them doing something good. They've actually shown now that if you can teach kids to be empathetic in toddler years, they actually turn out to be much better citizens that you're going to take care of you when you're aging. So really important, start young in teaching empathy. If you can teach them, like if you can catch them being nice to their brother. My favorite thing in our clinic is we have snacks and everybody gets one snack. And when a kid comes in and says, can I get one from my sister or my brother? Oh, I drop and go, you are so, look at you. And I'll go back and, your brother just wanted to get you a snack. And of course that kid's like, get me both. But, it's like, but it's like catching them being empathetic with a sibling and not fighting. It's all about that. It truly is. Awesome. Anything else that you guys do with fighting? Any other techniques? Because everybody kind of has like a little trick in their handbag about what they do. And we work a lot on this. I can't tell you how many kids come to my clinic because they were hitting someone else, and so they got hit harder. So just a really important piece. All right, potty training betrayal. Probably our number one reason for burns. Who's got potty training betrayal? So this one is, so who's got it? Somebody. Come on, be brave. There they are.
So yeah, we had the potty training one. So we said that why it's harmful, we would want to kind of tell them that hitting a child when they're potty training could make them afraid of the potty or the bathroom, and
That would be really
could,
harmful.
associate fear with something that's very natural, which is
Yeah.
the bathroom. We don't want to do that.
Right.
So that's why they shouldn't do it. And that would make them more anxious and scared. And then we would talk to them about kind of maybe waiting, that some kids take longer than other kids to learn potty training.
Yes.
To have somebody else help them with the potty training, that sometimes it gets into such a power struggle.
Yes.
That like if you could
I
have
love
someone
that.
else help you, whether
It's
another
awesome.
parent, family member, or even like a daycare teacher, and try to get excited when they want to be successful
That's awesome. Awesome. And you covered ineffective. It's going to make them afraid. That would be really harmful to mom long time because she's going to have to do diapers and pull-ups. If I ever won the lottery, you're going to know, because I'm not telling anybody, but I'm going to put Pampers and Huggies out of business, and I'm going to buy all the pull-ups, and I'm going to give them away to free to every parent, because no child ever went to college wearing pull-ups, so it's a cost issue. So, you know, and parents really a lot of times, I mean, it's expensive, and they can't go to daycares because of crazy things. I'm trying to work on policies in our community that say you can't say that the 3-year-old can't come to your daycare because they're not potty trained. That's putting unnecessary pressure on those parents. We need legislation to stop that stuff because kids are getting burned. I love, and I got to remember it. I usually have someone here to keep notes, and you guys all have great ideas. I love the idea that you said get someone to help you. I think, you know, there's a lot of research that says if we get parents to socially connect with their community and rely on their neighbor, the neighbor next door who is judging you the way you parent, if you said, I need a break, would you please watch my kid for 15 minutes? One, that neighbor's going to have a lot more sympathy for you, okay, after those 15 minutes. And two, if you can trust them with your child. But if you could rely on someone else, the grandmother, the aunt, or someone else to do the potty training, I did rely on my husband to do the potty training with my son, and that went really poorly. And at some point in time, I was trying to help my son understand that after you finish peeing, you just get like one little piece of, toilet tissue and just wipe the end of your penis, and so that there wouldn't be any dribbles, right? And my husband observed this, and he literally tells my son, son, men don't wipe, shake. Now, he did not, this is a true story. He did not model this, show this child. Midstream, this kid is shaking one day. And I'm like, you know what? You're cleaning that up because that is natural consequences, you and your son. But I mean, but I love the idea you're going to get help. The last story I'll tell about my poor son Trey, who's like, Mom, I'm going to go to law school and enjoin you from telling any more stories. I found for my son, especially for boys, is that I bought these little things from something called Right Start, and they look like little targets with like a little piece of toilet paper, and you put it in the bathroom. This kid would go drink water so he could go shoot the bullseye. I mean, that works. And you don't have to buy the stuff from Right Start. You can just take and put little roll on a piece of toilet paper, and I mean, like little boys are like all over it. And it keeps the bathroom clean. It does great stuff. So little things like that can make a thing. But I'm so glad you covered that they might not be ready. So often parents have unrealistic developmental expectations. And what scares me the most is you might have like a 1-year-old who thinks it's really fun to sit in the toilet and accidentally pees. And then the parent says, oh, they can do it. They did it. They were once potty trained. They're regressing. And then you know what they say? They're lazy. And so those break my heart, and we have to explain that that was an anomaly, that's not going to happen again, and it's not ready for that. And no one goes to college with their Pampers, so don't worry about it if we can get them for free. Mess maker. All right, who's got mess maker? All right.
So we would say to the mess makers, try to identify like a toy you like, so we could have something to play with instead of going to get the shaving cream and
Awesome.
it everywhere, and also try to let him know that we understand why he's mad because he got poppers. He was not staying still. Then he got poppers, and then he wanted to make the mess. So possibly he was retaliating or finding maybe an activity where he could,
Get his energy out, yeah.
get his energy out instead of, ignoring him or something.
I love that. Awesome. How would you tell her that the popping, no matter what they call it, the hitting, how would you say that's harmful?
So letting them know, just educating them that studies say, or have found that there is harm brought onto children when they are physically disciplined. And, if she brought up like the spirit of rod, explaining what that means, the scriptures, so they could possibly have a better understanding of that if they're, highly religious, and just have alternative
You got it.
to disciplining your children wisely.
Absolutely. Awesome. And I think it's just always important, just try to make sure you hit that third point, that it's harmful. It's harmful because they will fall back. The other thing I love with messes are kind of easy to do natural consequences. Let me get you something to help you clean it up. When I have really high authoritarian parents, I don't say natural consequences. I'll say things like, that child is going to clean that up. You know what I did with my kids? I made them clean that up. And my children, actually, at some point, my daughter made an announcement. Oh, yeah, my mom never spanked us, but I wish she'd have been like all the other moms who got spanked because she tortured us. And I'm like, Megan, what do you mean by torture? Oh, if you made a mess, you had to clean it up. She barely helped you. She'd like get you gloves to help you clean it up. And, you know, and the other thing my daughter always says, and if we did something wrong to anyone, we had to write a letter of apology. I wrote so many notes to my brother and had to say how I was sorry. And in her mind, it would have been easy if she was hit. So sometimes I find that, and I just bring that up not because it's relevant to your section, but just that for kids, and especially with authoritarian parents, if we stay away from positive, it really helps them. All right, I want to make sure everybody gets a turn. Destined for jail. What would you guys do with the destined for jail? Mom who's worried about, they got to hit them because otherwise they're going to go to jail.
You talked about normalizing this situation for her by sharing how many other parents face the challenge.
Yes, I love that.
You talked about what messages the child was given about the potential outcomes of behavior and how that looks. And because you had that note about the grandparents, we asked, how do you feel about your child's behavior? And what do you think is the best intervention for your child's behavior?
Empower them. I love that, to be that parent. And the other thing that we find is, can we talk to your parent? Can we talk to your mom? If you're getting pressure from mom, we'll okay, you got your cell phone there. You want to call them up? I'll talk to them. They say all the time, talk to my mother. And I talk to grandmother, and I show her the brain pictures because I got to get her community on board with her. But I love empowering her too and explaining to her. Anything else you guys want to add on that?
I don't know the age of this child, but one of the things that we wonder was the parents' knowledge of child development.
Yeah.
So it talks about him intentionally embarrassing her.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Right, and that's exactly, it's that I didn't mean to embarrass you. Kids don't. I mean, they're just, in that moment, they might not be able to self-regulate. They haven't learned that. It's that development piece, absolutely. Lazy penmanship. We have one of the worst cases over penmanship. Parents really do, who had lazy penmanship? All right, come on.
So we talked about like maybe reaching out to the teacher to ask like how penmanship and writing stuff isn't helping. We talked about how it wasn't a logical consequence to hit a child.
Love logical.
Penmanship's bad because that's not really helping them improve their penmanship. We talked about
That's awesome.
how it's not motivating to do that and it could just make the child more anxious. And then we talked about like that something could actually be wrong with their fine motor skills too, and talking about maybe like having some kind of like evaluation to see if there's actually like a problem. And it was mentioned like in the group that if there's actually a problem, they could do like occupational therapy or something like that. It didn't say how old this child was.
Right, we kind of intentionally leave them off. They can be whatever age you want them to be. But awesome. You care about your child. You care about their education. I wish all of our parents were like you. Awesome. Strengths. I love how you use the word logical. I find that if I use the word natural, for some parents that really want to be authoritarian, they kind of, but it was like a logical consequence, and it doesn't work. I love how you talked about fine motor. I have a master's in early childhood development. The biggest thing I ever realized is like just getting kids to work on their pencil grip. They really need muscles. And when you explain to the parent that this little fatty hand doesn't have the muscular ability to do that fine motor, but instead we could get colored popcorn and they could separate that popcorn and their penmanship will get better. The parent automatically realizes this isn't my kid, this is their hand. And so it takes it away, I find works so well. That's awesome. Good, good, good. Bad report card. Ding, 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 number 2.
Okay, this one kind of hit home for me because I actually had the situation because there was situations when my kids were getting bad grades
Thank
I
you.
got spanked.
Yep.
So I wanted to do something different. So what I thought would be is to take a more active role into why the grades are bad. How much time are you spending on television?
Yeah.
At one point, I even gave them an incentive. I would put a $50 bill,
Woo!
and a $50
I want to live in your house.
bill on the refrigerator. And whoever got A's and B's would get the $50 bill.
That's awesome.
And I would also, like my daughter, I learned that she had a learning disability. So that's why she was getting the poor grades.
Yeah.
So I took a more active role with her academics. I started using different means of learning. Like I would have her read to herself, read out loud and record herself and then play it back. So using different
Oh,
means
wow.
of taking a more active role. Pretty long story short, she would wind up getting the $50 off the refrigerator.
Oh,
She gave young.
that's awesome.
And it didn't help. When I spanked her, it did absolutely nothing. All it did was make her self-esteem go down.
Yep.
Self-esteem just went, she was even scared to try because, as she would put it, she even actually said to me one time, everybody at school already think I'm dumb. So if you beat me, then everybody at home will think I'm dumb too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I had to find something else.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's from your heart, and I really do believe. I love your technique of having her read it and record it. In this day and age with cell phones, how easy is that? And working parents don't have time to go over and recite all the homework. What a creative way to have that child. And we know that teaching is the best way to learn material. So, just like last night, I'm staying up late, kind of going over this, making sure I got, the studies right. But her being able to teach it to herself is going to teach her better. What a great alternative. I love that. Anybody else in that group that wanted to add something? That was awesome. And I love the testimonial piece. Did we have one? We had one more in the back. Who else has got one? Last one. Come on, no, I got somebody back there. Promiscuous teen? What would you say? Thank you. Awesome, absolutely. And how would you say it's harmful to hit a teen? And right. I love it. And absolutely, and inspiring them to think about this differently and telling them that I do love you and I want to respect you and I want to respect your body. I love it. The other thing is, with teenagers, it's really, really difficult because it really is about their self-esteem and about them being angry. And we know that for kids that get picked up, from running from harm, the number one harm that they're running from is sexual abuse. Number two is physical abuse. So, that this could potentially put them in the harms or into the arms of a trafficker. And here's that one study I told you guys about earlier that actually showed that there is this correlation between that whole shades of gray, the whole book, all right? So we've gone over a lot of solutions and different things. Do you guys think this is a kind of fun activity to do? I will tell you, I go into some schools in New Orleans where we just got rid of paddling in Orleans Parish, all right? So we still had the practice of hitting school children with boards, and we used a cute little cognitive dissonance word named paddling. And I have a lot of teachers who tell me all the time that if we could just hit them with boards, they were better behaved, even though their scores have gone up since we got the practice of hitting kids with boards out of schools. You guys were kind of an easy group. I didn't have one of you who said I would believe in spanking. But you can tell me that in your survey, and your attitude matters, because I want to know where you really are and what you really would tell a parent, because we really are trying to develop messages to make this easier. So if you guys want to join our campaign, we have a painless parenting, Instagram, Facebook. And we have a whole bunch of materials, but most of my new materials, which are these that are by age that you guys had on the back of your material, we're testing right now with focus groups, but they are available. You can download them from our Facebook group and use them. And if you think I put something really dumb or that there's not scientifically supported, I have thick skin, you know, high sunscreen. I promise you I won't be insulted. Tell me, okay? Because I'd rather learn from you than give parents a bad message. So they're based on ages, and we just have them in the exam rooms so that they can pick it on their own. And on the back at our ones at the office, and not this set, it has a pledge that a parent can sign and put on their refrigerator. And taking that pledge that I'm going to do something different for my child is really where it all starts in preventing this abuse. So I want to thank you guys. You guys have been an amazing group. I have enjoyed this day immensely. And thank you for enduring yet another session with me, because many of you are frequent flyers at this point. So thank you. I appreciate it.